You've felt it before. You're walking alone, and suddenly you know someone is behind you before you hear or see anything. You wake up 30 seconds before your alarm goes off. You walk into a room and instantly know something is wrong, even though nothing looks different. You think about someone you haven't spoken to in years, and your phone rings and it's them. You've always called it intuition, a gut feeling, a coincidence. But what if it isn't any of those things? What if it's something older, something your ancestors relied on every single day to stay alive? And what if modern life didn't just make it less necessary? What if it systematically switched it off? Let's start with what you were taught. In school, you learned that humans have 5 senses: sight, hearing, smell, taste, touch, clean, simple, memorable. Also completely wrong. Scientists have known for decades that this list is embarrassingly incomplete. Humans demonstrably have at least 9 senses, and depending on how you define the term, possibly more than 20. Proprioception tells you where your body is in space without looking at it. Thermoception registers temperature. Nociception processes pain. Vestibular sense tracks balance and spatial orientation. Interoception monitors your internal organs, your heartbeat, your hunger, your need to breathe. None of these are on the original list. The 5 senses framework was proposed by Aristotle in the 4th century BC, and we just never updated it. For over 2,000 years, the most commonly taught fact about human perception has been a classification system invented before anyone understood how the brain worked. So if the official list was already wrong, the question becomes, how wrong? And the answer is significantly. Here's where it gets strange. Because buried inside your skull, right behind your nose, is a small region of tissue that scientists spent decades arguing about. It's called the vomeronasal organ. In most mammals, it's a fully active sensory system that detects chemical signals from other members of the same species. Pheromones. Emotional states. Reproductive readiness. Fear. Aggression. Safety. All of it transmitted chemically through the air and received by this organ below conscious awareness. In rats, dogs, cats, horses, and hundreds of other species, this system runs constantly, feeding a continuous stream of social and environmental data directly to the brain without the animal ever having to think about it. In humans, the organ is still there. Anatomists can find it. It's a small pit in the nasal septum, present in the vast majority of adults. But for most of the 20th century, scientists believed it was vestigial, a leftover, a biological footnote from an earlier version of us that no longer did anything. Then researchers started looking more carefully, and what they found was uncomfortable. In 1991, a team led by David Berliner at the University of Utah discovered that when human subjects were exposed to certain chemical compounds derived from human skin, their mood changed, measurably, without them knowing why, without them smelling anything in the conventional sense. Women exposed to compounds from male skin reported feelings of relaxation and mild euphoria. Men exposed to compounds from female skin reported similar shifts. The subjects had no conscious awareness of detecting anything. But their physiology changed, their brain activity shifted. Something was receiving that signal. Studies since then have documented that humans respond to fear pheromones, that mothers can identify their newborns by smell alone within hours of birth, that people consistently rate the body odor of genetically compatible partners as more attractive without any other information about them. Something in us is still reading the chemical information in the air around us. We just stopped paying attention to it. But the vomeronasal organ is only one piece, because there is another sense that researchers believe humans once possessed far more strongly than we do now. And this one is even harder to explain away. Magnetoreception, the ability to detect the Earth's magnetic field. Before you dismiss this, consider that it exists in an extraordinary range of species. Migratory birds use it to navigate across continents with pinpoint accuracy. Sea turtles use it to find the same beach they were born on after decades in the open ocean. Honeybees use it to communicate direction. Bacteria orient themselves with it. Even some mammals, including dogs, cattle, and deer, consistently align their bodies along the north-south magnetic axis when resting. The biological hardware for detecting magnetic fields is ancient. It predates complex life. And in 2019, a team of researchers at Caltech, led by Joseph Kirschvink, published a study that should have made front-page news everywhere. They placed human subjects in a specially shielded room and rotated the magnetic field around them using controlled electromagnetic equipment. They had no idea what the experiment was measuring. And yet, their brains responded. Specifically, the alpha wave activity in their EEG readings dropped sharply when the magnetic field rotated in one direction, but not the other. The human brain was tracking the magnetic field. Unconsciously. Automatically, without the subjects having any awareness of it at all. Kirschvink called the results clear and remarkable. The processing was happening. Somewhere below the threshold of conscious awareness, the human brain was still running a program it evolved millions of years ago. We just lost access to the readout. And this matters because of what our ancestors almost certainly used it for. Hunter-gatherer groups navigating hundreds of miles of featureless landscape. Early humans crossing open water between islands with no instruments. The extraordinary wayfinding abilities documented in indigenous cultures worldwide that modern researchers have struggled to fully explain using only the standard 5 senses. The Polynesian navigators who crossed the Pacific using what they described as a felt sense of the ocean's direction. The Aboriginal Australians whose spatial memory of landscape is so precise it seems to exceed what vision alone can account for. The San Bushmen of the Kalahari who can track animals across terrain that leaves most modern humans completely disoriented. Something beyond conventional sight and hearing was in use, and we have the neural hardware to suggest what it was. So why can't most of us access it consciously anymore? The answer is the same answer that keeps appearing in the history of human biology. We traded it. The agricultural revolution packed humans into settlements where navigation over open distances became less critical. Cities eliminated the need to track magnetic north. Artificial light disrupted the circadian rhythms that kept our chemical signaling systems in sync. And perhaps most significantly, we built a civilization that rewarded conscious rational thought and systematically dismissed everything else as superstition. For thousands of years, anyone who claimed to feel things they couldn't explain with the 5 accepted senses was treated as deluded at best and dangerous at worst. The cultural pressure to ignore these signals was enormous, and when you stop listening to something for enough generations, the pathway between the signal and your conscious awareness grows quiet. Not gone, just buried. Because here is the thing that researchers keep noting. These senses don't disappear. The vomeronasal tissue is still there. The magnetite crystals that enable magnetic detection have been found in human brain tissue. The neural responses are still measurable on EEG equipment. The system is still running. It's just running below the floor of conscious perception. Which means every time you've had that feeling of being watched and turned around to find someone staring at you, every time you've woken up moments before your alarm, every time you've walked into a room and known before a single word was spoken that something was wrong, you weren't imagining it. You were receiving a signal. On a channel that most of the modern world decided to stop listening to 2,000 years ago. But your body never stopped broadcasting. And some part of you, underneath everything your education told you about how perception works, never stopped receiving. You've just been taught to call it something else.